Carlos Alcaraz of Spain just defeated Novak Djokovic in the 2023 Wimbledon final to claim his first title at SW19. Now in this video, I'm going to be showing 10 reasons why I think Carlos Alcaraz is the most complete tennis player in the world at just age 20. The first reason is his serve. Now he has a lot of room to improve his serve. He can turn it into a real weapon, one of the best servers in the world. I believe he can become if he changes a few things, but he already sets up the point so well with that serve. It allows him to dictate play with that serve plus one, the serve and volley, and the serve and then drop shot. Now Carlos uses a pinpoint stance, meaning the feet start apart. During the motion, he brings them together and he drives from that position. He also uses an abbreviated swing. So unlike a Federer or a Sampras, where they drop the racket down like this, Carlos goes from this starting position straight into that trophy position. Now in the trophy position, his strings are slightly more on edge than most players. So he has the racket in this position when he reaches that power position. This increases the range of supination prior to contact. And I've always felt that it gives me a bit more pop when I've tried the palm facing the body versus the palm facing the ground. Something else that Carlos does extremely well on his serve is he gets his body weight over the baseline. So he has his hips over the court prior to actually launching into the ball. So it's going from this front leg position to the back leg position, gets his feet together, gets his hips stretching over the court, pulling him towards his target, and then that allows for that extreme shoulder over shoulder snap that we see. The second reason is his return of serve. He has a very wide base when he's waiting to return, and he's very explosive with that outside leg pushing off in either direction. This explosive first step from the outside leg allows him to reach extremely wide serves and still get the racket on it. Now he has a very compact backswing on both sides when he's facing big servers, so he's not taking a big full backswing. He's just blocking the ball on the backhand side, or he's blocking the ball on the forehand side. And finally, he's very willing to chip or block the return when he's facing a big server. So a lot of players, they think I have to hit the return, whereas Carlos is happy just to slice it, get himself into the point, and then start to try to look to turn the tables against that server. The third reason is Carlos's movement. Carlos is extremely explosive on the court. He has very good footwork patterns. He often uses the crossover and the cross behind step to recover. But the two most important elements in his footwork and his court coverage is number one, his explosive leg muscles. So you can see he's not just training his legs to become strong, but he's also training them to become explosive. You can see that he's doing a lot of work in the gym where he's going down and up extremely quick from the squat. He's doing a lot of sand training, which helps improve the fast twitch fibers of the muscles and increase the speed. And finally, he has great flexibility, which increases his range of motion. If you think about a muscle that's very tight, your range of motion will be extremely limited. But if you have a long range of motion because you have flexible joints and flexible muscles, you can then cover so much more distance with one step. And that's what we see with Carlos. Extremely explosive, extremely quick in general, but he has a great range of motion because he works on his flexibility on a daily basis. The next reason is the Carlos Alcaraz forehand. Now Alcaraz has a mixture between, I would call it the next generation forehand, which is something along these lines, and then the modern forehand, which is more the Federer style, which is where the racket head is above the grip. Now at the start of the forehand, Carlos is in this kind of modern style forehand, but then he starts his preparation by lifting the elbow. So the elbow comes up and the tip of the racket will be pointing towards the oncoming ball. So it's in this position as opposed to a Federer where he's in that position, the tip of the racket is pointing up. So that slight hybrid forehand actually allows Carlos to have a little bit more space to accelerate the racket. Now from this position to the power position, he's already starting to build some racket head speed. Once he reaches the power position, the forehand is very similar to that modern style. The racket head is above the grip and the tip of the racket is typically pointing up to the sky. From this position, Carlos then has that extension, so he uses that full extension on the forehand. He makes contact far out in front of his body, and he tends to finish often across the chest, or we can sometimes see him bending his wrist, so from this wrist back position to then the wrist coming all the way through. And it's almost like a slap, where he slaps at the ball with that loose wrist. Now I think this is happening because he's so relaxed on the forehand. It isn't a conscious decision of him to actually slap that ball. It's more a case of he's so loose, he's using his body so well, he's using the coil, he's using the legs to drive into the shot, and finally his arm is relaxed, which allows him to then have that loose wrist at the end. The next reason is the fact that Carlos is willing to come forward and finish at the net. Now this gives him a huge advantage over a lot of players who struggle to actually come forward, who don't practice their volleys enough and don't practice approaching off those shorter balls. In those big moments, on those big points, the last thing you want to do is see your opponent at the net, someone who is very capable of covering the net extremely well, and that's Carlos. He can cover both sides. He tends to approach down the line more often than he goes cross court, and he also covers his line extremely well. He's following the ball, he's following that line, and he gets into the right position so that he can cover the down the line pass, and he can also cover that cross court pass. So his awareness at the net is extremely impressive for someone of just 20 years of age. This is something that we can see that Juan Carlos has really emphasized in the Alcaraz game. Get to the net, finish the point when you can, and don't be afraid to take those short balls on. The next reason is the Carlos Alcaraz backhand. Now, I wouldn't say his backhand is quite as good as Djokovic's just yet, but he does three things extremely well on his backhand, which allows him to win a lot of points. Number one, he has a great shoulder turn, so he's facing the net with his right shoulder. He has that great coil at the start of the swing. Number two, he gets his racket head higher than the grip level, as we can see in this image right here. And number three, he has a great extension through the point of contact, and he uncoils extremely well. He isn't one of these players who just hits and stays back, keeps their back foot planted. He actually focuses on uncoiling properly and then recovering. And that uncoil gives him so much power because he's actually allowing the hips to work properly all the way through that swing. Another thing that he does extremely well is he uses the open stance backhand on those wider balls when he's defending, and he uses the jab backhand when someone is attacking him. Now, very often players will have a solid backhand when they're in a neutral or attacking position, but when someone attacks them and they have less time, this is when they struggle. This is when the backhand tends to break down. And what Carlos does so well is he jabs at those faster balls. He isn't trying to do a full backswing and he isn't doing a full finish. What he's thinking about is just simply redirecting the ball and using the opponent's pace. So that jab shot, he does extremely well. The next reason is the Carlos Alcaraz drop shot. Now, he disguises his drop shot incredibly well, and this actually then makes his forehand and backhand power shots more effective because the player never knows when he's actually going to pull this out of the bag and hit that drop shot. What he does so well on this drop shot is he sets up with his normal forehand or his normal backhand swing, and during the swing, during that motion, when the opponent is already preparing for a powerful drive, they're moving back. That's when Carlos will then go from this forehand grip into that continental grip to then hit that drop shot. So he's setting up in his normal forehand swing. Once he reaches somewhere around this part of the swing, that's when he changes into his continental grip to impart that underspin. The same on the backhand. He gets into that power position, he sets up like he's about to drive that backhand, and then at the last second he takes the top hand off and hits that drop shot with the continental grip. Remember, when you're hitting a drop shot, the disguise is 50%. You have to disguise this shot. If you hit the perfect drop shot but your opponent reads it before you make contact, they're already running forward. Whereas if the opponent is anticipating a deep shot and they're on their heels, they're waiting to run to the side, and suddenly you hit the drop shot, even if it's landing halfway in the service box, if you've disguised it well, you can win that point. The next reason is Carlos's passing shots. Now, a lot of players, they're very good at defending or they're very good at attacking, either or. Carlos can do both. He can defend extremely well, and then he can change the point around by coming to the net. Now, a lot of this comes down to his balance. When you're under pressure, when someone is attacking you and coming forward, you have to maintain good balance, and this is what Carlos does extremely well. You also have to make sure that you're finding the right target to aim into, and this is what Carlos does very well. He finds the opponent's feet, or he finds that cross-court or down-the-line pass. He often uses the lob as well, just to give himself some time to get back into a good position on the court and hopefully throw off the opponent with that overhead smash. Now, something else that Carlos does extremely well with those passing shots is he reduces the backswing and he creates a smaller swing but still has the full follow through. The next reason is the mental side of the game. Carlos enjoys himself when he's competing. We can see him smiling, laughing. Very often he's looking up at his box, he's having a conversation. He doesn't look like he's hating his job. He doesn't look like he's suffering on the tennis court. He looks like he's having a lot of fun. He's fist pumping, he's smiling. You can see he's out there to fight, to compete. And this is one of the reasons why he's had so much success, even though he's so young. Now, something else that's so important, and we saw this in the first set, was his nerves. He was extremely nervous in that first set. He wasn't making enough balls, a lot of unforced errors, and he settled down. In that second set, he made a lot more balls. He started to find his range. He started to get into the match. And that's one thing that we've seen often with Carlos. The bigger matches, even if they affect him at the start of the match, by the end of the first or by the beginning of the second, he's settled down, he's into the match, and he's not focusing on, this is my first Wimbledon final. He's focusing on, how do I win the next point? So he has nerves of steel. We can see that the big matches won't affect him too badly. He'll be able to get through those nerves and play some of his best tennis. And this is one of the main reasons why he's been able to win 2 Grand Slams already. A lot of the younger players have the game to win a Grand Slam, but they don't have the mindset. They don't have the mental state to actually execute in those bigger matches, the quarters, the semis and the finals, against the player of Djokovic's caliber. Now, if you think about that 5th set, when Carlos was serving for that title, he could have froze up, he could have hit a couple of double faults, he could have made some really horrible errors. And in fact, he did make one bad drop shot down the line, which cost him that first point, but he actually overcame it. He was able to rip those forehands, and that shows you that he's got something inside of him that not too many players have. And finally, his tactical awareness. Now, it's great to have all of these weapons in your game, but it's choosing the right shot at the right moment that's so important in tennis. And this is what Carlos tends to do more often than not. Yes, he makes some poor tactical decisions. He'll hit a drop shot at the wrong moment and the opponent is already on the ball and crushes it for a winner. But more often than not, he's choosing the right shot to hit. He's using that out wide serve to open up the court to then dominate with his forehand. Or he's choosing the right moment to serve and volley. Or he's choosing the right shot to actually run around, look like he's about to rip the ball and hit that drop shot. So his tactical awareness is very impressive for someone of his age. Typically, the players tend to build that tactical awareness throughout years of competing on the ATP Tour. By the time they're in their mid to late 20s, that's when they start to understand when to use each shot. But Carlos already has that at such a young age. So there are 10 reasons why I think Carlos is one of the most complete tennis players in history. Now, do you guys agree? Leave your comments down below. I look forward to reading them. I try to reply to all of them, so leave those comments now. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel of course, and make sure you turn on that notification so you don't miss out on our future lessons. Signing off, Coach Simon from TTT. All the best and see you soon.